On top of Old Horror Hill, in a secret laboratory, Professor Weirdo and Count Kook were in their monstrous glory. 6 drops of the...
Ready? Hi, welcome to TMR Podcast number 6, Artificial Scarcity. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but first of all, zero fluoride water filters.
For a sponsor.
Beautiful.
And the mint that's homegrown in my garden. Anyway, as you guys can possibly maybe see, the sun is perking through the window and it's beautiful spring day in Australia. We've had a freezing winter, of which I luckily missed 2 months. I was in Europe. This guy froze his ass off.
That's it. It's been tough.
The extra layering helped out, I'm sure.
That's right. I'm not artificially scarce there, that's for sure.
All right, well, today is, in a sense, a topic of all topics. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. I think artificial scarcity, I'm going to read out a definition that's written in Wikipedia, and it's not going to be something that makes sense to most people, but we're going to bring it around, and you're going to realize that it's something present in your everyday life, and something if most people understood, the world would be almost instantaneously a better place. Anyhow, artificial scarcity is defined this way. Artificial scarcity describes the scarcity of items, even though the technology and the production capacity exists to create an abundance. The term is aptly applied to non-rival resources, i.e. those that do not diminish due to one person's use. Although there are other resources that could be categorized as artificially scarce, the most common causes are monopoly pricing structures such as those enabled by intellectual property rights or by fixed costs in a particular marketplace. Well, I think we're going to have a slide, perhaps with most common examples in people's lives of artificial scarcity. All you need to do is go drive down the highway, and you're going to see things like, oh, the old new KFC pie, limited time only. Mm-hmm. Now,
limited
KFC
time
can make 1 billion pies for unlimited time, and the idea is because you have the psychological perception that, oh my God, if I don't get this pie this week, then I'm never going to be able to get this pie.
Well, when we're talking about food in a way too, you can't really drop the price on food, right? Because we're talking fast food, right? So the prices are pretty slim. Yeah. So they can't say 50% off this time only, because we all know what the price was last week. Yep. But they can offer limited edition.
And I mean, limited edition is not limited by anything real. It's just limited by
the sales
imagination.
It's a sales pitch.
It's limited by the imagination of the marketers. And I think on our slides you're going to see, KFC spicy something. Only on Tuesdays you can get it. Or the McRib in the United States. There's a phenomenon where tens of thousands of people gorge themselves on this absolutely terrible fat-infused pork thing. All because it's only here for 2 weeks, the McRib. Yeah. And truth is, they sell it all year round in Germany or wherever else, and they can make however many they want. But this notion that...
I don't think it even comes from a pig.
God, no.
I think it's artificially made.
So, when you think of artificial scarcity, perhaps better than the economic definition we've just given you, is this special edition thing or limited time only offer. It's something that there is no reason for the limited time or nothing special about the edition other than the aim to create a perception in your own mind that this is something that, I very soon will not be able to get. Therefore, it's more valuable because my window of opportunity to get it is closing. And that is the first psychological insight into. I think it gets even funnier and more insidious, with fashion and limited edition apparel and shoes.
We could talk about, watches as a perfect example, a Swatch watch, limited edition. Like they make millions of watches and they sell millions of watches, but every now and again they go, things are a bit slow. Yeah. Let's bring out a one-off, a limited edition. Now, we won't tell the people how many we're going to sell.
I'd actually number them.
Sometimes they do, but they don't. Right?
Yeah, very often they don't.
They don't like to, because if it's limited edition, it's doing really well. They'll run it. Limited edition limited edition might not be just a number. They might not say we're only going to make 1,000. It could be, we're only going to limit it for 6 months production or 6 months of sales. which could be millions.
Absolutely. And I mean, we got some interesting pictures of Nike sneakers, but the funniest is perfume, limited edition of perfume. I mean, there couldn't be a funnier example. They make this thing for cents a gallon. I mean, perfume is one of those things that the packaging that it's in costs 10 times more than the perfume.
Product, yeah.
And the edition is limited, again, by nothing tangible, nothing real.
But even I can give you an even better example that you'll find even more funny. These morons who line up in front of the Apple store 2 days before because the new product release, it's going to be released, and they only have a limited number for that particular, you know, like we've only given so many to Australia, we're giving so many to, I don't know, England. So people line up because they want to be the first so they can, and it's like a status thing. Look, I got the new iPad. Oh, yeah, they're like a little demigod. And Apple promote this in the way where they get all their staff, the morons, to line up out the front. You walk down that carpet and everyone's clapping and you're high-fiving. So just for a split second in time, you're a celebrity because you've waited outside for 3 days in the rain to get this iPad. Then you walk in the door, right? You've got your iPad. People, and you're walking out. People don't even know who the hell you were.
It's a neat mental trick. You just randomly brought up something that possibly one of the first times I experienced this. This is about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. I was a bit of a socialite, for want of a better word, and we're going to this club, and we.
Social.
No. It's one of those clubs where you got to get your name on the list, right?
And social fairy.
And there is this, big bouncer and a pretty girl there, and, we're going like, yeah, our names are on the list. Yeah, that's me, and that's me. And I said, like, okay, just wait out here. I'm like,
why am I waiting?
Why am I waiting? He's like, can we come in? And he's like, we're working on it. They were like, working on what? Anyway, people, I'm just standing there bewildered, right? And people arrive right behind us, and then they open the thing and let us in. And then the club is nearly empty inside. It's still kind of early in the night, but the perception is they got to keep the queue outside. It's got to look like, if it's a fancy club, the other people have to perceive it like, oh, people are lining up to get in, and what they were working on is nothing. They were working on...
Well, they're not working on numbers in the club because there wasn't anyone in there. They're not working on the fire code. I mean, we got how many people are allowed in there full stop. But yeah, that's
waiting
right.
on somebody to rock up so they can keep a line outside, and the club looks, oh.
This is the whole idea of the velvet fence out the front and the carpet out the front. It's all to make it look special and inclusive. And, and your name on the list is another way of saying that you're better than Joe Blogg, who walks off the street.
I think, since the topic is artificial scarcity, I think it's possibly the neatest psychological trick to make something appear valuable.
Of course.
And I heard a funny story. This is like a historical tale. I think it was Dan Carlin's history podcast or one of those. The Arab traders used to come to Europe, and they'd sell pepper. And pepper grows on a plant. You grow it by the hundreds of kilos. But they were saying this thing is so valuable. We have so little of it, and they were carrying it in little special satchels and said, "Oh, our special servants climb mountains and hills, and they have to fight eagles to get this rare thing that only grows between the rocks." And so the Europeans had this perception that pepper was something rare, and they were selling it for thousands of times the value of pepper because, Arabs who were traders, for generations, wrap their head around this concept: artificial scarcity. We need to appear it that as if the stuff we're selling is exclusive and rare.
Yep.
And I think that that's at the core. And we took, I think, the examples of fashion, of seeds, of clubs, and fast food, but we're going to get into some more serious topic. And perhaps one of the insidious things going on today is we have this artificial scarcity of seeds. Now, I've had a backyard garden for 2 years now, and I can tell you one thing: saving seeds is like the easiest thing in the world. But fruit is so loaded with seed that the notion of buying seeds is perhaps as a matter of convenience if they're really, really cheap. But if you're a farmer, if you're growing one corn, for instance, has a couple hundred corn seeds, which, if you let it dry out properly, you can harvest in a matter of a minute.
But most farmers save their own seeds too, because they pick the best plant, the one that gives us the biggest cob, the best, you know, the one that seems to be maybe a little bit more resistant to the pest. The pests have eaten all the other ones but this one, right? And so they're going to save those particular seeds more than anyone else for the next crop the year after. They're not going to save just anyone. But yeah, you're right.
You made the point. I mean, seeds are abundant.
Yes.
And we live in a world where a company called Monsanto is making hundreds of billions of selling seeds. And there's something inherently weird about this. And they have, through a mixture of mass industrialized farming, where farmers basically grow tens of thousands of hectares of food that they literally can't be stuffed saving their own seed, because it's like an industrial operation on one hand. No, let me finish. So you have the volume being so high that the guy doing it, you know, like the seeding part of it, he just wants to outsource it to someone else. And then secondly, they are fenced in with the lawyers who, because cross-pollination happens so much and so many seeds are already Monsanto seeds, the second that one of those seeds gets into a farmer's field, the farmer who's been saving his own, that farmer gets sued by Monsanto, and he has to pay as if he grew the whole thing Monsanto. So in a sense, they're pushing them legally to just keep buying these seeds, and seeds are abundant. There's no reason for any farmer to buy.
The reason why Monsanto makes money out of seeds is because Monsanto sells to industrial farms. We're talking one farm that might grow, 1,000 acres of corn, or let's say 1,000,000 acres of corn, right? And because you have all that corn in one spot, it's going to be susceptible to a certain bug. Or if I was to, let's just say, in our country, in Australia, if I was going to grow fish and chips, right? And I grow 1,000,000 acres of fish and chips in one spot, I'd have more seagulls than I could poke a stick at. So Monsanto grows a corn crop that stops those bugs from attacking a commercial crop. In a small area, if you were growing only a small amount and you were diversifying your crop, you wouldn't have those bug problems, because one season you grow corn, next season you grow, tomatoes, whatever, and the bugs wouldn't want to eat those particular crops.
Basically,
but you're right. When they pollinate with the other farmers, then all of a sudden the lawyers get involved, because now we're talking about the patent system, and they're suing them until haven't got a farm left, because you stole our seeds, and it's just so wrong. It's not funny.
And I mean, perhaps if we lay down so many details about Monsanto, we might as well say that they sell. The idea is they sell chemicals.
No.
And they sell plants that are not going to die by the treatment of Monsanto chemicals, which are going to kill all the bugs, all the pests, and...
There's one thing we forgot here. On the commercial crop across the road that grows the 1,000 acres of corn, those seeds are terminator seeds. So once the crop's grown, there's nothing you can harvest from it, right? But the farmer across the road who's been cross-pollinated, he doesn't know this, right? But he's cross-pollinated. He grows this GM Roundup-ready corn so the bugs don't eat it. But now his plants are now terminated. So now he can't even save the seeds from his own crop to grow next year. Now, where's he going to buy seeds from? He's got to buy them from Monsanto.
But they've basically
their business model is killing anyone who saves seeds.
And seeds, we repeat, seed grows so abundantly that there's virtually too much of it. I mean, the plants that we have in spots where we grow tomatoes just start popping up anyway, because just one drops off and one had 30 seeds in it, and those get scattered, and I'm having tomatoes pop out all over the place, as well as pumpkins, as well as various things. Seeds are so abundant, it's usually a problem to stop all the seeds coming in from everywhere. Now, I think our next point is going to be artificial scarcity of water. And this is where sort of capitalism or corporatism gets involved. Water supply. I mean, water being a public good, water is running down, tens of thousands of rivers of planet Earth. There's enough fresh water on Earth for every single person to consume, I'd say, multiple swimming pools of it. However, if, let's say, a city has a single freshwater source, being one river, if one company buys the rights to that source, they will be able to all of a sudden charge dozens of times more for that water. Because in a free market open system, the only people they're competing against are people that would have to ship in water with trucks from hundreds of kilometers away, and the costs of that are astronomical, and the profit margins on the people selling something that's practically on tap are massive.
But what we've seen in other countries too is not only does the city borrows money from, let's say, the World Bank, and then they spend the money, obviously, because that's what governments do, and they have to repay, and they don't have the tax income to pay it. So then the IMF or the World Bank force them to sell assets, and assets like water assets. They sell them to IMF. IMF then sell them to a private company. The private company puts the price of water up, but then people can still capture the rain in the sky. So then the government, because they've got no money, and now they don't have the water assets, now they license. So anyone who catches, because the water is the property of the government, it's not God's water. So now if you've got a dam on your property, or you've got a tank and you're collecting water off the roof of your house, now you've got to have a license or a permit from the government to capture that water. I mean, it just gets more and more ridiculous.
And I mean, in Australia it isn't so bad, but you gotta beware when private companies get involved with the ownership of your water, that by definition, their purpose in life is to make a profit. The way they make a profit is by artificially limiting the supply of that water for you. So your life gets worse because you have less water, and then you're going to have to pay more for the less water that you have. And in Australia, we have a very strange problem. You know, most people are going to laugh their asses off to live in Australia when I tell them this. We all had this water restrictions in Victoria. Oh, you know, government tells you, well, you know, we're stage 4 water restrictions. You cannot water your garden, you can't wash your car, you can't do this. You should have a 1-minute shower and just run out really quickly and then buy special water-saving shower heads, and they rip you off. They charge you 3 times more for the water than it used to cost. Now, 80% of water in Australia is fresh water, is spent on watering paddocks for livestock to graze. So just imagine, like, millions of Aussies going around, you know, doing their best to save the water, dubbing in the neighbor. Oh my God, he's watering his garden. You know, the police come, he's wasting all our little precious water.
He's washing his driveway.
While a million, you know, while 20 times more water than all the people in Australia use is being sprayed by the gigaton onto fields so that cattle can graze, so we can have
gigaton.
Yeah, I mean gigaton. I don't know if that's an expression that I heard originally on nuclear weapons. No. That's how they. It's within, but
gigaliter.
Gigaliter. Yeah.
Gigaton. I've never heard of it.
Water weighs. Okay, water has a weight and a volume. Okay, you could say a kilo of water, and technically it's not wrong.
All right.
Thank you very much. So, the idea is, if something that is abundant, like seeds, like water, like food, like it should cost next to nothing because it is abundant. And if it costs something, it's a deliberate ploy of people trying to rip you off. So,
well, we go back to food just for a second.
Sure.
We know, and we know that in 1972, with the way agriculture was, we could feed the world, right? With the amount of agriculture output, we could in 1972. Don't ask me what the population was, but with the way we'd set up agriculture then, we could feed the world 15 times over.
Yep.
And a lot of people go, well, why are there? We've got poor people in Ethiopia that can't, you know, that have got no food and they're hungry. They're dying of hunger around the world, and the poor people can't eat. It's all because of money. They don't have money, and it doesn't matter what Monsanto or companies like Monsanto grow these huge, you know, grow huge tomatoes and corn in the desert that needs so little water. These seeds are going to become expensive. So what third world nation can afford to buy the seeds with the Terminator seeds, so they can't just keep regrowing it and keep regrowing that crop to save themselves? And we already know in India, we're talking thousands of people a year, farmers, are killing themselves because of Monsanto.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna. I've kind of got a call from work. We're not gonna stop the camera. We're gonna cut it and resume in 1 minute. Water, and then you moved back to Monsanto. And
Just
the last
quickly.
thing you said was
It was about how they could manufacture enough food in 72. And we talked about... We already got past that, so we've moved on from that. Let's hit a new subject. Let's go straight back into a new one.
Well, our next aspect of artificial scarcity is drugs. I mean, the reason that people go out and pay $300 a gram of cocaine isn't because the coca leaves are rare or scarce or grow on tops of mountains. In South America, it's the most abundant plant you can think of. It's like grass in this country. And with drugs being illegal, which means that normal people can't make them in quantities that they need, but people still want to use drugs, it opens up a black market.
Yep.
Artificial scarcities open up black markets, which exist because something is required. The supply is artificially low. The supply would be abundant globally, but the supply is low because people aren't willing to take the risks, because the drug is illegal, and income criminals, gangs, drug dealers in general who are willing to take this risk. And all of a sudden, this desire of a certain class of people to acquire these illegal drugs is what funds and funnels a great proportion of the crime we have in the West.
Yeah, but you can
It's
see
drug-related.
with the drug related, when we have drug dealers or drug gangs killing and maiming other drug gangs, it's because they're bringing in an oversupply into an area, gang's area. So you got one gang selling to a certain limited amount of people who take those drugs, another gang comes and moves in and takes their customers. Now you have an oversupply. Really, what would happen there in a free market is those drugs would become cheap as competitors come in. Yeah. But guess what? You don't want your competitor. This is illegal. You're going to shake them down.
Then
and
they
that's
shoot
why
each other, and then the price goes even higher.
That's right. So,
I think it's in both their interests to occasionally shoot each other up.
And steal one another's drugs. So, you're talking about a really good example of artificial scarcity there.
And it makes no sense. I mean, if drugs were legal...
But what's the price of marijuana in Holland, where it's legal to grow it, it's legal to smoke it?
It's slightly more expensive than cigarettes, from what I know.
I don't even think it's that, because anyone can grow it. It's not tobacco is a product that's a little bit you have to have
taxed.
the right. No, forget the tax side of it. But you really need to be in the right place. You need the right weather, there's so many things you need to grow tobacco. And if you're growing in a certain amount of quantity, you need to be spraying it with certain chemicals. I don't know much about it. I know a little bit because I've done work in those areas. But with marijuana, in our country, it's a weed. This thing can grow anywhere. You just throw it in the ground. You don't even have to look at it. It'll grow. So we're talking about a crop that's so easy to grow that needs so little, where tobacco obviously would require more with chemicals and the right weather and conditions.
And I mean, the notion that a plant can be criminalized, I mean, it's a plant. You see, it's like me randomly deciding, to criminalize potatoes. It makes no... This plant has been around for millions of years before human beings. It's something that's a product of the earth. There is no, how can someone come up with a law to say that no, this plant is illegal?
Well, I know we're getting a bit off topic here, but a lot of guys I know smoke marijuana, don't really have jobs, and being a capitalist system, if you ain't working in the system and you're smoking drugs, we probably should ban it.
Yeah, I presume it's got a little bit to do with that.
You're not a consumer. Get out.
It's I mean, we're going to talk about the incentives against scarcity towards the end, but I think we're going to hit the next topic, which is artificial scarcity due to patents. And I mean, I'd like to kick this thing off with one example. Okay, we've all been celebrating, starting with Al Gore, a hybrid car, Prius. Prius is a car that has, dual motion with a petroleum engine and an an electric motor, and it saves energy from the batteries, and it does a bunch of intelligent, inventive stuff. However, a Prius has 2,000 patents. Now, anyone in the world, anyone trying to make a hybrid car is going to have to pay Toyota off in the millions. So in a sense, Toyota's just put a big wall in front of anyone trying to make a hybrid car, which is what we need at the moment. You know, something that uses less soil, something that's more gentle on the environment, something that you know, moves us a step closer from the caveman, let's burn, you know, fossilized stuff for energy, you know. And this progress isn't happening because Toyota, who, you know, most people consider a lovely company for making us a hybrid car, has put such a bunch of barriers in front of every other company trying to make a hybrid car. And I mean, examples abound, you know. Microsoft, I think they have, in like 2003, they decided to go from 1,000 to 2,000 patents a year in 5 years, and they actually have so many patents that if you're trying to make some product that's operating system related, you would probably be in violation, you know, of some Microsoft patent, and should you be successful at it, they'll be knocking on the door asking for money, you know, extorting it. And as you can see, these patents stifle innovation, and if you stifle innovation, you stifle productivity. If you stifle productivity, you're by definition making something less abundant. And having already covered the patent system, I mean, it was still worth re-mentioning this thing again, and I find it pretty insidious. So, I mean, comments, Chris.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, you're going to put all those patents up there, and then now you can have a team of lawyers, because you're Microsoft and you've got plenty of money. Anyone who comes out with new innovation, you can try and file it back to one of your previous patents, which could be 15 to 20 years old.
Yeah.
Right, give or take. And patents aren't, they're not for just one particular thing. They can be very vague of an area and say, you know, we were looking in that area there, you know, that, look, I'm not a computer person, but we can make it pretty vague where we're looking. So if you enter, let's say, I don't know, the biggest thing is speech recognition software. Right now, that's the big money spinner for phones and companies. So if you have a lot of patents in that area, anyone who comes anywhere near it, you can
start
pretty much
extorting them for money.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, the notion where you have technology companies, right, spending more money on lawyers than the engineering side of the company, the research and development. I mean, it's insane. Like, it makes no freaking sense. It's kind of like, I mean, you don't see anything with a natural reference frame. You don't see a giraffe, instead of, you know, going about eating grass and finding other giraffes to have fun with, or whatever the hell giraffes do. You don't see them filling paperwork for half their day, while it only for half they could be a giraffe. I mean, the purpose of a technology company is to produce technology and sell it to the world. But it has this notion that with this profit maximization, they make more money if their product is more exclusive, if less people can make it, and therefore it pays for them to limit the supply of their product in such a way that other people can't make anything similar. Well, I mean, that's how they achieve it. They use the patent system to achieve artificial scarcity of their product.
Well, we also know too, and I'm not going to. I know I'm jumping a little bit off the patent thing because it's not. It's something I know a little bit about. But when we talk about, I know this injection molding, right? We build a die. Now it costs a bit of money to make a die, right? But if you're chomping out 1 million pieces out of that die, those pieces that you make are going to be so cheap because the material that you use to put in it. Now, if I use an example like Lego, right? Now everyone's got Lego, and everyone's played with it. This stuff is super cheap, but every now and again Lego come out with a limited edition this, limited edition that, new this, new that, right? They're using dyes and injection and bits of plastic that are like, I think you calculate them in like 0.000 cents to make. You know, wow. I mean, you know, that's what I'm talking about. And this Lego stuff that they're building and you're putting together with the same blocks could be $100 toy for a kid.
Yep.
You know,
I mean, I just spent $120 on the little Harry Potter Lego castle for my little nephew.
So now you know.
It hurts. The point is, they create this also artificial demand, and the kid's like, oh, unless I have this toy, I will never be fulfilled, and my parents hate me, and
But like even Sonny knows, because that's his thing too. Once you build a mold for something, for injection molding, and there's a lot of things that are around us that are made out of plastic, like this keyboard in front of us. I mean, obviously there's billions of keyboards out there, but once you do that initial mold, that keyboard is worth cents.
Yep. Cents.
It's not worth any more. But they tell you, you just assume that, look at it, it's good quality, it's this, it's that, and, it must be worth more. We have this idea in our minds that once they build a robot to put it together and an injection molder to make it, this stuff is worth nothing.
And, we're not going to really talk about solutions yet, but really, in this moment, I really got to say that, open sourcing technology changes that so dramatically. I mean, when it comes to control systems, 2007, when I started working as an engineer, it cost $7,000 to come up with just a very basic control system, which, say stops a machine from jamming. When it draws too much current, it reverses, moves forward, reverses, moves forward. And then a mechanism that just does that tells the motor forward, backward, when it's jammed, cost us $7,000.
Seems very basic programming.
Now, today, and frankly, I've learned over the last 7 months how to make one myself, and it would cost me, if I buy goods from China, like the Chinese copies of open source products, maybe 20 hours and $80 to do the same. And can you just imagine when you have this technology, firstly somebody shows the world how to do it, they open source it, and then someone from China copies it, makes a cheap copy. How quickly, I mean, we're talking 6 years. What the actual value of the $6,000 thing was. In 6 years, the world has taken it from $6,000 to,
Yeah, but isn't it...
maybe $300 if you factor in time.
But isn't it amazing how China see a product and they go, gee, that's a really good product. We think that everyone would want that. Let's mass produce it. We know what it costs to mass produce. It costs pennies in the dollar. And we can still make a huge margin at the other end on turning it over. Now, I'm sure if China could get away with it, they'd go building Ferraris on a production line tomorrow. And Ferrari...
I don't think, there's certain...
That's when it comes into laws and patents. You've got patents, number one, and you've got laws. So even if they made a billion... let's say they made 1 million Ferraris tomorrow, right? And we'll go, yeah, we want a Ferrari, and it only costs $10,000.
No, but Chris, I've got to interject. Here's the thing: open source makes a world of difference, because open source gives the Chinese the exact schematic, the exact dimensions, the exact everything of the original product, and then they can put out an exact copy. I mean, I'm not going to bring it over, but this is the original one. And this is, for instance, an Arduino Mega. This is what I was talking about. Like, this thing runs control systems. This is made in Italy. This is the original one. It's cost me $65, about 70-something delivered. Now, with virtually identical components, you couldn't tell the difference other than the font. The Chinese one I paid $14 for. Why do I buy the original one? Because I want to support the company. And I keep buying their products because they're the ones who are innovating, releasing it into the world. And then the Chinese are copying that, and we have high quality copies. If the Chinese copied the Ferrari tomorrow, it would be one shitty Ferrari. Maybe in 10 years of refining their shitty Ferrari, they'd make a good one. Whereas if it's open source, if the schematics are released, they can make a good Arduino from the first try. And that's the difference between, just copying a product that you see from what you see and having a product open source. It's designed to be copied. And I mean, the idea is exactly the antidote to artificial scarcity, because these people say, well, if you have the designs, anyone can make it. Yeah, but if anyone can make it, then you have the real price reflected in the market.
But the great thing is, too, you're supporting them. And not only that, you're adding your software to it, and then you're open sourcing that. And then someone's grabbing your software and go, well, thanks for that 80 hours you've put in to do that, and I'm going to put another 10 hours in, making it better, and then that's going to go online, and then someone's going to come across and go, well, I'm going to put another 40 hours to make it do this, this, and this. And then now that's open. That goes back to the original person who goes, well, hey, you know what? I've benefited from giving it away because now I got it back with another 40 hours of work on it that I don't have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the great thing about open sourcing.
Precisely. Now, I mean, let's see. Oh, we got like 3 big ones: diamonds, oil, and money, and they all have a lot to do with artificial scarcity.
Well, diamonds, they're expensive, and money's expensive.
I mean,
unless you're printing it, and oil. Wow, those oil people, they got hardly any oil left. That's why we're paying so much for it.
I mean, let's talk about diamonds for a second. I mean, we both watched this documentary that we can highly recommend. It's called Diamond Empire, and YouTube runs around deleting this thing like crazy.
So when you look for it and it's been deleted, someone will upload it again.
Someone will upload it again. I mean, it's always there. It's just, I don't want to put down a link because it'll probably...
They just don't want to show young women who want to get engaged what their diamond's really worth.
It was very interesting. It tells the story of the diamond cartel, and it starts with the De Beers and the Oppenheimer and the South African colonies. The original De Beers mine, so the first mine where they got a lot of diamonds, it was an alluvial plain, and they were lying around on the floor like rocks. They would get black slaves to wear a tin around their neck, and they would walk around for half a day and walk out, on average, each person with half a tin full of diamonds. Market value, $10 million. The point is, diamonds are abundant. The 1 carat diamond that costs, $10,000, that the average upper middle class person gives their wife, oh, dear darling, I love you so much, I slaved for 6 months savings to give you this ring, is worth about, in real value, if the market was open, it was worth about $100.
I gave my wife a piece of coal. Told her to wait.
You're not serious. Chris, did you buy a diamond ring? Be honest.
I told her she wanted to marry me because I'm, me. I said, you go buy it yourself.
Did you really? Did you buy a diamond ring? Honest.
No, she went out and looked for it. She paid for it herself.
Really?
I know that sounds terrible, but
Dude, I mean, props.
Back when
I tell every girlfriend, and it's not a nice thing to say. I say, no matter what, I may wind up being really rich, but regardless, I will never buy you a diamond if it's the last thing I do. It's out of principle. And to add to this, not only are diamonds abundant, but in the 80s, GE invented a way to manufacture diamonds. Big, giant, real diamonds. They could color them too. And they came up with an agreement with De Beers and forgot all about that. The point is, diamonds are something that...
No, I think you're wrong, because they do manufacture diamonds, industrial ones,
they
for
agreed
cutting.
that they would never, ever sell them for non-industrial purposes.
That's right. They're for industrial mining.
But they've been... That technology has been suppressed, and I mean, you can see it in this documentary. The point is, everyone could have a massive diamond on a keychain. That's how abundant diamonds are. But through a genius piece of marketing, which was like, ooh, on your 10-year anniversary, on your 25-year anniversary, your husband does not love you unless he gets you a diamond. I mean, a lot of women believe that. Your husband is a cheapskate unless he spends, the equivalent worth of 3 monthly salaries on your diamond. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is such an insidious con.
It's all about how big
your husband doesn't love you unless he shows you that he's a lemming, a sheep of the ultimate proportions. I mean, it's an insult to logic. However, people should know this: diamonds are abundant, and you're being ripped off. The scarcity is manufactured. The De Beers, when the wild, they call them diamond miners, were making diamonds in Africa. They were just digging them up out of the ground. De Beers would send over their men with millions of dollars to buy them on the spot so they could keep the market undersupplied, so they could keep the price high. So most of De Beers is the #1 purchaser of diamonds in the world, Not because they need diamonds. They have more diamonds than they will need for the next 5,000 years. It's that they keep buying them, so the supply is low, so the price remains high.
Now, do we know where De Beers is located? The head office.
I think it's London.
Why?
Well, I'll tell you. Yeah, that's a pretty funny one.
No, it's really funny.
They're not allowed to operate in the United States because, despite the fact how corporate-friendly the United States is, De Beers is so clearly a monopoly that they violate every U.S. monopoly law. They can't even shade their way, well, kind of, sort of, we're not a monopoly. They are a monopoly. That's exactly by the definition of the word that De Beers is. And that's how the price is being kept high.
Right.
Now, artificial scarcity of oil. To an extent, even, I don't know, Chris, about you. I mean, I do believe in peak oil. I do believe that oil is a resource that is being depleted. Quite possibly it's regenerating at some speed, but we're consuming it way, way faster than it's regenerating. Mm-hmm. So I'm not here saying that oil is like diamonds abundant, that we're never going to run out of oil. But what I am saying, however, is that oil companies have every incentive under the sun to produce a bit less oil than is needed in the market, to actually give you a perception that there is less than there is.
Oh, they like the whole idea that we're running out because they can charge more.
If there is less oil, it's worth more.
But the other thing too is you wouldn't be going looking for more oil if you thought you had enough. That's not. I know. Look, don't get me wrong. I know
Chris,
populations expand.
I'll answer that.
No, I know populations expand too. But I know you wouldn't be going into shale because that's expensive extraction. If you were just pumping it straight out of the ground.
Chris, here's the answer to that question. De Beers are looking for diamonds all the time. They're buying new mines and they're prospecting, and they have. They have tons of diamonds. I mean, there's more diamonds than you need in thousands of years. Why? Let's say you are the 5 oil companies, and if you're not looking for new oil, someone else will find it and put it on the market and drive the price down.
Oh, we know that they go around and they find something, then they cap it and leave it.
Yeah. So they're exploring, but they're not spending much of what they're exploring. And, I mean, there are series of memos. We're going to post 1 or 2 of them. Of oil companies in America writing to each other, going, yeah, we're going to buy up all the small refineries. They were literally buying up small refineries and shutting down refineries, reducing the refinery capacity, because if the refinery capacity goes down, the United States by default can produce less oil. And if they produce less, the price goes up and they sell it for more. And, I mean, it's a documentedly proven thing that they've been reducing the refinery capacity in America. I mean, that's a fact.
Well, that's how to push prices up, for sure.
And so, I really, I did a video some months ago called How Much Oil There Is in the World. I mean, and then the conclusion was really, it's impossible to know for the following reasons. But I am exceedingly confident, I can't be certain, but I'm exceedingly confident that the estimates of oil that you're going to be given by OPEC, or you're going to read in Wikipedia, or that are going to be written in congressional reports, are smaller considerably than the amount of oil that there really is. There have been reports again and again and again of the Alaskan North Slope, of very many different oil discoveries that make the paper for 5 minutes and all of a sudden nobody hears about them again. So there is more oil than most people think there is, and the reason why is because it's being kept. The scarcity of oil is exaggerated, and it's exaggerated because the price goes up. Well, it's in the interest of oil companies to keep doing that.
You also look at it from the other point of view, is that the first diesel engine was made by, I can't remember his name, someone Diesel, German guy. And he made it to run on plant oil, not on petroleum-based oil, on plant oil. And we all know that, we can grow certain plants, whether it be sunflowers or olives or
corn,
hemp. No, we're talking about plants that produce oil, not ones that can be converted through that way. But so corn, forget about corn, that's ethanol. But oil plants, so we know it's renewable because we can grow mustard seed or canola and produce oil to run those particular things. But the price to grow those crops and to manufacture into a product to use in our car is a lot more expensive than the oil that gets pumped out of the ground. So, there you go.
Oh, and we're down on the artificial scarcity of money. Now, last night I went to this, Chris, I don't know, I imagine you've been once or twice, Truth Cinema?
No.
It's a group in Melbourne that does meetups where they watch, sort of consciously aware movies.
Do they wear tinfoil hats?
We're watching, typically, lots of people.
Chant 9/11 a lot. 9/11, inside job.
Yeah. But, we watched a documentary, something about, Jekyll Island, and it was basically about the history of the Federal Reserve, of central banking, history of banking.
I know a bit about this.
And they went through the past the documentary went through past like 5 major depressions, and all of them, every single one, was caused by a shrinking of the money supply. Well, from 1.7 trillion to 1.3 trillion, or from 3 billion to, and they went through every single one of them, and in every single case, money was certificates printed by the banks. Sometimes it was tied to gold, but either way, these banks had printed, in a sense, their gold reserves went up while the number of certificates in the market for those same gold reserves went down. It was an artificially manipulated lowering of the money supply. And when you have this perception that there is less money in the market, it's harder to make money. If it's harder to make money, then you stop paying wages, you start shutting down businesses. If businesses shut down, the businesses who supplied the businesses that shut down start shutting down, and it's a chain, and the money's scarce. People go to banks to get their money. And even though the banks now are we're always leveraged 9-10 to 1, meaning that they borrow out 10 times more than they have. All it takes is 10% of their customers asking for their money, and then the banks crash. So the very simple act of shrinking the money supply, which is completely artificially invented by banks to begin with, creates a massive financial meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
And after every single one of them, essentially the money trust, as they call it, I mean, the bankers, the financiers, the investors, the big company owners, all after the depression, within 5 years later, they're much richer than they were before. Because
why? So
many of small businesses crash, competitive firms crash, and you can buy them all up for pennies on the dollar.
Well, who's buying them up for pennies on the dollar?
The guys that had the most money to begin with.
The banks.
The banks and the major
friends
of the banks, big corporations.
Yeah, that's right. So they buy up your business that you've worked, or your property that you've had to sell because you've got no money, you've been left out in lurch. So they buy that up.
So just imagine, before there's a Great Depression happening, and I mean they say in their excuse in history, we lost money too. But wait a second, you have $1 billion in the bank, and you lose half of it. But the asset values across the industry, land becomes 10 times cheaper. Companies that produce certain things become 10 times cheaper. So all of a sudden, that $5 million, where it looks like you lost 50% of your money, can buy 5 times more than your $1 billion could before the depression. That's because right. All the asset values go down to close to zero, and the money you're left with can buy up so much more than the money you had before. Even though on paper it looks like you lost money.
And then while you're spending that money, you're putting money back into circulation.
Yes.
And then you're creating a boom again.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. I mean, people need to realize that today we live in a world that's dominated by fractional reserve banking, which means money is legal tendered. Money is not a certificate for any good. Money is not backed by land, or gold, or silver, or clouds. It's backed by a promise.
Clouds.
No, there is nothing backing the money, in other words. Money is something so artificial, and interest on that money is also something so artificial. It's a rate that a bunch of bankers sit down and set at the end of the month. And if you have too much money, inflation, it's because they, by typing in some numbers in a computer, created too much. If you have too little, it's because they created too little. And there is no external thing you can blame for inflation. I mean, you could trace everything that's happening with the economy, whether it's booming, crashing, whether it's inflation or deflation, all the cause and effect. I mean, the only people that have a substantial effect on it is the central bank in a country and the top, say, 5 to 10 financial institutions that do most of the trading in assets.
Well, here's another thing too is, let's just say that I own a house, right?
Yeah.
And I decided that I was going to put up as collateral to borrow money from the bank, so I tell them, this is my house, you know, I want the same amount in, you know, I want $500,000 in cash. And then I went out to the next bank and said, here's my house, I want $500,000.
Yeah.
And then go to another bank and I want another $500,000. It's called rehypothecating, right?
Yeah.
Now, for me, it's illegal. I can't do that. I'm not allowed to go to the 30 different banks and ask for money for my house, because when I don't pay back that money...
And if you took money of all 30 of them, I mean, you would be in jail.
But now that I've got all this money, let's just say I got all this money, and then I don't pay back those loans, and they all come in for my house, and it's only worth $500,000. Well, they take me to court, I go to jail. But in England, banking institutions can do this with gold, property, any asset. They can rehypothecate it. So they can sell that. They can say, oh yeah, we have this. We have, you know, $10 billion in gold, or $10 billion in land, and they can sell it, create money, give it to the public, and then do it again and again and again. Now, when that bank crashes, and if, let's say you're a secured creditor, right, which none of us are, the people who put their money in the bank are not secured creditors. We're unsecured creditors after a certain amount. But when we come to collect, and we say, but hey, wait a minute, we put our house up, we put this up, where's our money? They can say, well, you know, you have to fight with them and that other bank, and you have to fight with that company and that corporation for that asset, because we sold it to them, to them, to them, to them, to them. But because they're a company, who's going to jail? Nobody. They're allowed to do it. Legally, they're allowed to do it.
Liability. And guess what more? If that's not enough, they have no fractional reserve limit. So, in effect, if I have $1, you know, if a bank has $1 million, they can lend out $10 million. That's the case in America, Australia. In America, they cheated on it, but they broke the laws, you know, and it's clear that they broke the laws. In Australia, I think banks are relatively tight around it. So if Commonwealth Bank was to have $10 billion in assets, they could loan out $100 billion, so 10 times as much.
The only problem is...
in London, there's no limit. So it's equivalent to me. Let's say all my net worth would be whatever, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and I could go like that, with, you know, in my socks and thongs,
socks and sandals,
and I could, you know, go to BHP and say, guys, I can loan you $100 million for this project here. There's $100 million. You owe me like 5% interest on that. And by the time they paid that, they extinguished their debt, I'd make $5 million a year on the interest. I'd probably make like 30, 40 million without having anything. You know, like a guy without assets, like a bank without assets, can make such massive loans and earn interest on those loans.
How do you become a bank?
I mean, I think that's
a license. That's a license from the government.
That license from the government. I mean, it's a license.
It's a privilege.
To steal. It's a license to steal. It's a license to siphon money. Mm-hmm. And I mean, when you have fractional reserve, it's theft. And when you have no limit, no reserve limit, it's theft unlimited. I mean, in a sense, banks in England steal more than any gang of criminals that you've ever heard of ever did.
But see,
in history.
I mean, really, when you want to find out, let's just say we want to know how much money's in supply, right? How many English pounds are out there in supply? Now the government could do an audit, I suppose, of some sort, but then they can't, because you don't know how much money's been written out of that checkbook. You don't know how many checks are in that checkbook. You don't know that. You can look at a computer file, you can look at books, you can go through auditing, but you're never going to see the checkbook that no one gets to see. And it's like saying, let's say you're a king, right? And I'm your friend, and everyone knows that we're mates and stuff. Now, what about if I start writing out and handing out checks to people and go, yeah, king's mate? Take my word for it. I wouldn't do the wrong thing by you. It's got the king's name on this checkbook, so Now, let's say I had no assets, but people believe that I have assets because I'm friends with the king. I'm writing them out in the king's name.
Yep.
Now that might work for a long time, might make a lot of money. But geez, I tell you what, don't start coming to collect.
Yep.
Because the king's going to do one or two things. He's going to make a runner, or they're going to hang both of us.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I think we've kind of hit 8 topics, people. We gave you 8 examples: fast food, fashion, seeds, water, criminalization of drugs, artificial scarcity of patents, diamonds, oil, and money. These things are central to human civilization. Seeds, oil, food, patents.
Diamonds.
In the West they are, my friend. In the West they are. You can't get married with that one. And now we're going to talk about, some of the more systemic problems and some of the solutions. I think one thing people got to watch out for is the privatization of abundant things that are common, like China buying vast swaths of land. This continent we live on is so huge. We're bigger than Europe. And even though not a single Australian feels the consequences of a foreign nation coming down here and buying lots of land, it could come back to bite us. If private companies can own your water, if private companies can own your electricity, it's very likely that sometime down the track in the future, you are going to be paying extortionate prices for things that are way more abundant. Energy is something that, at the end of the day, is infinite. Human technology has some limits in terms of how much of that infinite we're able to extract. And there has been historical cases and cases and cases of our ability to extract energy from various sources being suppressed, because the idea is if there is a simple technology that can be replicated all around the world for producing abundant energy, then companies that make oil would no longer make trillions of dollars. Mm-hmm. Companies that build nuclear power stations would go out of business, and too many big businesses would suffer. And since they're the ones in command of that technology, no single player wants to be the one that destroys the entire industry, because in effect, most likely their life would be in danger. Well, it's too disruptive. It's too big.
Well, also, they've got to. They don't like competition. No business likes competition, and also any new technology that might interfere with their business model is also a huge threat.
So the lesson for the people is, if your resources that you depend on, food and energy, should be communally owned, if at all possible. In Germany, I've spent 10 days in Germany in August, and I'll tell you what, there's windmills every 10 meters and solar panels on every roof, and apparently 50% of the energy that Germans spend is communally owned. So the neighborhood gets together, pools some money, builds wind farms and solar farms, and then gets the energy. They own their own production. So it's kind of like it's the capitalist solution to the ultimate socialist dream, which is, we gotta take over the means of production. And I get the visualization of people storming factories and going, yeah, now we own this shit. No, like, make your own. I think the future is going to be in producing your own food, producing your own energy, and in effect you are doing your own means of production, and you're going to be the owner, not some hard to define collective. And collectivism is good so long as you know who you're sharing stuff with.
Well,
and if it's some vague collective, the nation, the country, the world, then that's where things fall apart.
I think it's going to get to a point where the people are going to start, like, with 3D printers, make their own stuff. With the solar panels on the roof, they're going to produce their own energy. collect their own water, where they pump it out of the well or they catch it from the sky. It's going to get to a point where smaller communities and suburbs are going to be more independent than others. And then the other people in those other areas are going to see what's going on, like you've seen in Germany, and they're going to say, "That we want that. We want that." As long if people can see it and they can see how it works, they'll want it. As they want it, it doesn't matter how hard the government, state, local government, or federal government come down and go, "Well, now we're going to make you pay fines, and we're going to tax you on that, and you need a license to pump water, and the rain's owned by us, and you need a license, and we're going to put a meter on that." What's going to happen is then the people are going to rise up and say, "But you're not doing anything. Yep. You're not doing. You've done nothing for us. We've put the infrastructure in. We've put the infrastructure in. We've worked it. We've done it really hard. We've put all the work together, and we're now reaping it from our benefits. And all you want to do is tax us on it. Well,
you own the sky. Okay, why? What have you done to put the sky there? You don't
what would happen is the parasites. The parasites will get. They'll be gone.
I believe that. What else is there to say? Oh, I don't care what you believe about drugs or whatever, but I think plants, nobody should be capable of owning a plant or of banning a plant. Plants are a part of the landscape, just like nobody should own the sky or the clouds or the ocean. Plants are a part of the landscape we were born on. They belong to Earth. Maybe you could say we all, they're part of the environment in which we live, and I don't believe in prohibition or ownership of genes of plants or anything like that. I think fundamentally, even separate from the philosophical aspect of the question of whether it's wrong, it is against the interests of 99% of people of the world to give any one government, individual, or corporation the capacity to own such things as the sky or plants. They are not ownable. They come before we rocked up here. And then
we have a very odd law here in Australia, which I know over in Europe they don't have, and I'm not sure about America so much, but I definitely know Europe, and that is that no one can own a beach in Australia. You cannot fence off a beach in this country. If you do, you'll be thrown out of this country so damn quick if you put a fence up. All beaches are open access. There are some beaches that are closed, but they're closed because the military use them for military stuff. But other than that, all the beaches in Australia, you cannot fence them. You cannot restrict people from entering or not entering them. So I find that that's just the way it should be.
I agree. I think private property should be. It's a good thing, but it should be limited to the land you live on, and potentially the land you need to produce the fruits of your labor. But I mean, you live in a world today where some dude can go and buy Madagascar, house by house, get a team of lawyers, and next thing you know, well, you see the 10 million of you out there, African people, you're trespassing. I'll have you shot unless you go. And then they'll be like, what? How can you own something like that? It's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's worth saying. There are things that are in everyone's interest that should be outside the sphere of anyone's ownership.
Start pulling those fences down.
Yeah, I think one thing worth mentioning that people should be skeptical about is licenses. Licenses are also a means of artificial scarcity. I mean, if you license only lawyers that finish their however many years of this and that, and potentially you can have a school that teaches people to believe a certain way, which is potentially biased, limited, potentially wrong, and only give those people a license to practice law. You could run into a problem. I mean, why not somebody who's intelligent and articulate can have a logical, rational argument? Why can't someone like that just represent you in court? You have perhaps another example of licensing going wrong is psychiatry. I mean, we're all human beings. We have 24/7 experience of being human and interacting with humans, and I guess we have some idea of what's normal and what's not normal. And we live in a world where only somebody who finished, 10 years of School of Psychiatry, which is created and funded by pharmaceutical companies, only such a person is an authority for what's normal.
But who's he to judge?
But that's my point. He's the one who has a certificate that says only my opinion on who's normal counts.
And this license enables me to charge you X amount of dollars.
So, what we're trying to say, people, here, be wary of licenses. I mean, of course you want the guy who's building your house, you want to guarantee that he has experience in building houses, he knows what it takes to build one, and some type of a qualification is a good thing. But
that's a different type of license. That's a license that anyone can get, right? It requires you to have a certain amount of knowledge. But these other licenses of restriction. Yeah. And, I mean, we can even go to a taxi driver. In this country, you can't just become a taxi driver. You have to get a license. Those licenses are like between $200,000 and $300,000 licenses.
Wow.
They're expensive, right? And these people that have them, that's like their retirement fund, And they get the guys who drive the cars who have, man, they shouldn't even have a license to drive a car, but they're driving a taxi with people in it. They're reaping a lot of money from those licenses because they're charging them out every day. They're artificially scarce.
They're artificially scarce.
Yeah, we only have a certain amount of them for a certain amount of taxis.
We have millions of cars, and we've millions of people who can drive those cars. And the artificial thing that says, only some of you can be taxi drivers, and you have to pay the government hundreds of thousands of dollars, or whoever happens to be the present owner of a license hundreds of thousands of dollars, you have a problem. Licensing there clearly doesn't work. And perhaps we can mention a few solutions really quickly. We talked about open source technologies. Open source technologies make things abundant. And the idea, the next step of human evolution, of progress of our society would be that we make the needs that we depend on, food, shelter, energy, like electricity, fresh water, we make those abundant. We make those so abundant that they cost next to nothing.
You shouldn't have to pay to live on this planet.
Absolutely. I think that, you know what? If you want a Ferrari and a villa, by all means work very hard, maybe 16-hour days, start a company, whatever, build it up, have it. If you want it, work for it. But I think
the other half of
that,
this...
No, 1 second. If the resources are so abundant on this earth, an animal is born and there is grass to graze, there is no toll booth to let a deer into a field of grass and charge them in terms of this is what you have to do for me in order for you to eat grass. I mean, it makes no sense in the natural world. I think, some humans are going to choose not to better themselves, not to engage in economic activity, but I think regardless, you have a right to live. And some people are going to waste their lives, and there's nothing you can do about it. But you're a human being, you have a right to live on this earth. And not enough people respect that.
Maybe we should get a country like Australia, split right down the middle, and say, right, everyone who doesn't want to work the 9 to 5 and wants to live, there's half the country, there's all the resources, here's access to this, and this, off you go. And everyone who wants a Ferrari and live in the city, you have to participate twice as hard because the other half left. See how long it takes before the other half decides that it looks better over the fence.
I mean, I honestly think if we did something like that, there'd be a lot of movement in both directions, because a lot of people live very unfulfilled lives. I mean, too many people, the only satisfaction that they get is out of the toys that they buy.
Yeah, but that doesn't last.
Yeah, perhaps, when they left their jobs, they'd be like, ooh, I miss those toys, but perhaps it'd be the other way around. I honestly don't know, but regardless, I'm not advocating a world where people do fuck all. What I'm advocating is that you should have a choice. As a human being, the food and a roof above your head should be a guarantee because you're a human being, and we have the resources to provide for that.
That's right.
If you want more, which should be natural that you want more than just a couple of plates of food a day and a little roof over your head, by all means work for it. but we have the capacity to provide that basic.
But maybe
that's what I'm arguing for.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe that guy who just wants those 3 meals or 4 meals a day and a roof over his head and the heater in winter and the air conditioner in summer so he doesn't get too hot in his house and access to the parks and mess. Maybe he sits there all day writing some of the best stuff you've ever read in your life because he has the time and the free energy to do it. Yet we're never going to get that if the guy has to work 6 days a week to pay for that miserable existence.
I mean, the question is, are people lazy and selfish? And I would say that, most people, given a long enough period of time where they make all the decisions for themselves, where they're not forced into anything, are going to wind up showing that they're not neither lazy or selfish. Are there lazy or selfish people? Absolutely, but
of course. But these are conditions. I think these are people that have been conditioned.
Well,
you put all those people in one area. They just live off one another. You start mixing them up, putting them in different places in society where people work, where people have families and kids. You'll find that their whole existence will change. I'm 42 years old, and I've noticed that people of the same thinking end up being friends, or they get together and they, like people on a downward slope, they bring one another down, right? If you put those people in a totally different environment, they would be the way they are, but they would change. They have to adapt. They have to adapt.
Norms.
I'm not saying that someone from the western suburbs, the lower economic, would if I put him in the in a upper middle class suburb, he would change his ways. I can tell you right now. It's like
And I've had many conversations with people, and when I bring up everybody has a right to live, and they go communist, socialist, or whatever, and it's funny because honestly, if I can, for instance, going through a fancy university and whatever, tutoring kids now and living in St. Kilda for a couple of years, I know a lot of relatively rich people that have whose families have a couple $1 million. I have more in common with them. I get along better with them than most people out in whatever Frankston, the lower suburbs. But the problem that most rich people have in this country that wind up voting for right-wing parties is that, just like you said before, it's not some fixed condition that people of lower classes are a certain way and richer people are a certain way. People that live just above subsistence have had most of their choices taken away, have had a subpar education, live in an environment that they imitate, that's riddled with abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, stereotypes, and they just grow up there and they imitate it, and that gets perpetuated. And that some people would waste their lives despite opportunities, of course, but it wouldn't be the way it is. I mean, it wouldn't. That number of people would be small.
Most people don't see the opportunities in the
and just to add, like what we've gone on a massive tangent, but what I feel is wrong in the world isn't when a person invents something and then winds up making millions or tens of millions from it. The guy that invented penicillin, whatever, if he got rich, there are a lot of great men in history, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, potentially Nikola Tesla is an exception, but a lot of great men wind up being rich because they created something exceedingly valuable for mankind. And I think those are great examples. The rich people that are doing it wrong are the financial industry parasites, the bankers that create nothing. I mean,
they're living off you, the working
They're living off you. There is no benefit in this world of high-frequency trading that just skims cents and cents of transaction until it accumulates billions. There is no benefit in this world for institutions that slice and reslice and repackage mortgages and then push them on four corners of the world until these implode. These people are siphoning off real valuable money created by individuals in society that do useful things, and such people are a problem. And individuals that accrue tens of billions. I mean, how is it that Bill Gates has a right to have, millions of times more money than a middle-class Western society person. Millions of times. He could buy countries. He's just one dude.
Yeah, but see, I don't want people to think that just because you have money, you're smart. I mean, and that's a big misconception in our society that, he's got money, he must be really smart. Because if that was true, then every academic that we ever pushed out would be pretty rich. Reasonably rich, but they're not.
In fact, I wish it was. I mean, I wish it was that way. I wish the people with money were smart, I wish we live in a society that perhaps, 100 years ago, the ratio between wealth and, being an impressive human being was actually close-ish. Today, the wealthiest people are hedge fund managers. They are wealthier than professional athletes, famous authors, actors.
But why?
And they're leeches.
That's right, because they're living off
They're
living off. Yeah, that's right. They're parasites. They're living off the resources of the planet, or human resources of the planet. You and me.
Yep. So I think in conclusion, we wound up talking about money and being wealthy, and we want a world where being wealthy is a consequence of doing good things for the world. And if that's what wealth, if you could have an economy, a society where those two things come together, we'll be right. And we also want to stress that as a human being, you have a right to live. And I would like to hear anyone argue that a poor child in Africa whose survival chances are 10% doesn't have a right to live because, tough titties, you didn't happen to be born in the correct economic climate for you to survive. No. That's the two things we're pushing. You have a right to live, and some of the wealth, majority of the wealth in the society, is being siphoned away by people that create nothing of value, and that's a problem. And, I think we're going to end it here, even though we've gone on a 15-minute tangent right at the end.
Yeah, why not? Let's kill it. Let's kill it with a bit of...
But, I think the world that you live in, the world where millions of people are exploited and you have this globalized network of corporations that are in many ways exploiting everything from human beings to nature to animal life, is in great amount a product of artificial scarcity, of these corporations creating artificial scarcity in order to extract more wealth and resources from everything and everyone else. And we've given you some really good ways that you can make the world better merely by your awareness of that artificial scarcity.
Yep.
And with much love, I think we say goodbye to you until our next podcast, which is going to happen inside the next 10 days. We're going to have some people talking about psychology and oppositional defiance.
Yes, This song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who lived for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Freedom's calling, I feel the fire that's deep inside us. Everybody wants change, but tell me who will guide us. To the leaders that pass away, put up your lighters. It's a beautiful struggle, but it cannot divide us. We're the ones that we've always been waiting for. See yourself in the mirror and open up the door. Walk through it and feel the love throughout your pores. Be the light, life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, standing up for truth. The only one to make change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loo. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you. Be the change
that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace,
aspire to be
someone who fights for the beliefs. Like Martin Luther King,
aspire to be
that love,
that light,
like Christ,
life
for the moment indeed.
And if you believe
in Jehovah,
Allah,
Buddha,
Krishna,
it's love to me.
My soul yearns
for peace in a world that's flooded with war. History's littered with body scar, trying to settle the score to maintain an archaic platform of power and greed. People fight for land out of survival and need. So I'm killing my television and I'm planting a seed to fill my head with knowledge that I'm seeing recede. Due to the media propaganda killing my creed. Or what don't kill me make me stronger, feeling straight when I bleed. Fight for interest before it's attached to feet. They try to say you anything in this world, nothing for free. Land, air, fire, and water, they keep up in the ante while the anti-proletariat told the powers to be. But we keep fighting, surviving and thriving, recycling and rhyming. We constantly inclining, we see through the lying and prying. They tactically keep trying to keep you from asking the why.
Be the change that you wanna see in the world, like Gandhi live for peace.
Aspire to be
someone who fights for the beliefs, like Martin Luther King.
Aspire to be
that love,
that light,
like Christ,
life
for the moment indeed.
And if you believe
in Jehovah,
Allah,
Buddha,
Krishna,
it's love to me.
We find solutions, different possibilities, creating organizations like Aspire to Be, inspiring young minds to see, building life skills, nurturing creativity, fulfilling the youth's basic needs, listening actively, teaching the tools to succeed, positive role models, we plant the seed, the roots drink the water which feed the trees, someone help me, giving back is my responsibility.
Be the change that you wanna see in the world, like Gandhi live for peace.
Aspire to be
someone who fights for the beliefs, like Martin